I'd like to begin by thanking the Georgia growers for their continued support of our breeding program. So this talk's going to be broken into three parts. The first part, I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking about our nematode-resistant cultivars, and then I'm going to say a few words about our leaf spot-resistant cultivar, and I'm going to conclude with a few comments about a white mold-resistant cultivar that we're in the process of releasing. So I've shown this picture many times. Actually, Tim Brenneman took this picture many years ago. I think it's actually Tifgard. It's a field that he had with Tifgard and susceptible varieties with no nematicides. And Tim called this the green island effect. You can just stand at the edge of the field and see these green islands in the fields, and those are all Tifgard plots. So we're using that same genetics in our more recent nematode-resistant varieties, so it's near immunity to the peanut root knot nematode. So the first one that I'll mention is Tiffin V. Hiowell. That's a runner type, nematode-resistant Hiowell. It's the most commonly, for several years now, it's been the most commonly grown nematode-resistant variety. So if you have a nematode problem, you may be familiar with this variety. Yesterday, I modified this slide, but I had already uploaded my presentation. So if you see this slide in the future, I added that this variety also has a moderate level of resistance to white mold. Dr. Brenneman has documented that in his field screenings. And I also added that this variety has a pretty good level of resistance to peanut smut. If you want to know more about peanut smut, I'll refer you to the Peanut Grower magazine. They have a nice article in there about peanut smut and about the efforts of several researchers in the U.S. to try to stay ahead of this pathogen in case it comes to the U.S. But working with Kelly Chamberlain, we did identify that Tiffin V. Hiowell has a pretty good level of resistance. So if smut happened to appear next year, this would give us something that we could use until we develop the high levels of resistance that we're working on right now. A few years ago, we released Tiffin V. HG. It's also a runner type, Hiowell, nematode resistance. And we released this just to try to improve on the grade of Tiffin V. Hiowell. And in general, it has significantly higher grade than Tiffin V. Hiowell. After we released it, it was tested in several different places, and we realized that it really had very high yield potential. So, even if you don't have a nematode problem, you might be interested in trying this variety on your farm. It really has performed well. Since we released Tifgard, we've had people asking us, do you have a Virginia type with that level of nematode resistance? So we made some crosses and we released Tif Jumbo, which is a Virginia type with high level of nematode resistance. It's also high oleic. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and I have several pictures thanks to Leslie Schumacher, who took some pictures at this field site. This is from Attapulgos last year, and it was just a phenomenal screen for nematode resistance. So we, working with Tim Brenneman, we arranged a late season field day down there, and these shots were taken at that field day. And you can see the drastic differences between the genotypes that have that genetics and the genotypes that don't. Of course, 06G does not have nematode resistance, but Tiffin V. Hiowell does, HG does, side-by-side comparison. So it really was striking. I'm not going to present a lot of data this morning, but I did want to show this data. So this is yield data from Attapulgos, the pictures that you just saw, 2023. And this is yield data from 2024. And you can see the drastic difference between 06G and the resistant varieties in 23. Not so drastic in 24. However, all of them but one were significantly higher than the susceptible check. But the main reason I'm showing this slide is to show you we've got several our breeding lines in the pipeline coming along. The one that I'm most excited about is this one here on top in 2023, 17, 22, 14. It was also at the top in 2024. And this is a normal lake, a line with a high level of resistance to nematode. And so when I talk next year, I'll probably be talking about the release of this as our next cultivar. A couple of comments about leaf spot resistance. Okay, just to let you know how I organize this. This is a test with just one spray of convoy to control white mold, no sprays to control leaf spot. Its yield from the highest to the lowest on the left side, and leaf spot resistance from the most resistant to the least resistant on the right side. So you can see here TIF CB7 had the highest yield and the highest level of resistance to leaf spot. And that's in comparison to our susceptible check 13M, which did not have leaf spot resistance, and the yield was penalized because of it. This was a 2024 test, a similar arrangement of the slide. This was absolutely no sprays, no convoy, no leaf spot sprays. In this case, showing the high yield potential of TIF and VHG, although it doesn't have a high level of leaf spot resistance, it was still very high yield. TIF CB7 was also very high yield and had excellent resistance to leaf spot. One more slide, last data slide. This was another test with some breeding lines that we were hoping would be better than TIF CB7, but none of them were, so we'll probably discard all of those. But we included CB7 as a check. It had the best yield and amongst the best for leaf spot resistance. And this is a slide that Albert Culberth showed this morning in his trials when he had TIF CB7 and beside Tough Runner 511. Last thing I'm going to talk about is 17223. It's got high Oleg. It's a runner, and it's got excellent resistance to white mold. I'm not going to present any of this data, but this is where the data came from. This is kind of the gold standard to evaluate material for resistance to white mold. It was a screening system that Tim Brenneman developed. We get a large crew of people to go out there and inoculate each one of the plants. Where those flags are is one plant. We put a plug of agar with the white mold growing on it right next to the stem of the plant, right next to the main stem, and then come back at the end of the season and spray paint that area, and then invert, and Tim and his crew goes out there and rates those for white mold. He rates how many of those individual plants have white mold, how many of them are, really what we're looking for is a high percentage of no white mold. And also then he looks at, if they do have white mold, how long is the infected area. So 17223 was in his trials the last 3 years. His trials, he always uses 09B as a susceptible check and 12Y as a resistant check. 17223 was significantly better for resistance in comparison to 12Y 2 out of the 3 years, and it was numerically better the other year. So it's got excellent resistance to white mold. We've also yield tested it at several different places. It's got very good yield and it's got very good grade. This was a little increase that we did last summer. We're currently turning over about 300 pounds to Georgia Seed Development so that they can begin a foundation seed increase this coming summer. Just put this up here to refer you to Georgia and Alabama variety trial results. You can see our lines are in these. This is Georgia, but just go online and look at this, and you can see the yield potential for all the lines that I've talked about today. Couldn't have done it without my technical support. Jason Golden on the left and Shannon Atkinson on the right. They really have a lot of pride in what they do, and they're really responsible for any success that I have. And also the funders. Thank you to all the funders for their funding.